Okay, we're going to go ahead and get it started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Uni Consulting Uni咨询free webinar series. My name is Joyce, the founder and CEO of Unilight. Today, we're featuring student life in University of Michigan Ross School of Business. We're recording this session for those who can't join us live today. We're excited to have Katie Cameron, second-year MBA student at Ross with us. Hello, Katie. It's so great to have you with us today.
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here.
Hi, Katie. Would you like to give us a short intro to start with for students who are not so familiar with your background?
Yes, absolutely. So, hi, everyone. My name is Katie Cameron, and I'm a second-year MBA student here at Ross, as Joyce mentioned. My background is in consulting, so I was working at Deloitte Consulting before school, and I was mainly in the technology space. And then fortunately, I am actually sponsored by Deloitte, and so I knew that I wanted to use my time in school to tailor my career to what next steps may hold. And so I wanted to transition, still being in technology, but a little bit more focused. And so that drew me to Ross, as well as the Tauber Institute for Global Operations, so I could focus a little bit more in the operations space. I'm also doing the sustainability concentration, and I hope to join the sustainability team back at Deloitte. Other than that, I, loved all of the aspects of consulting. This was a trip to Australia that I took. And all consultants love traveling, as I'm sure you know. So we'll see how the industry looks, in a few months and years. But yes, my time at Ross, I definitely, because I am not transitioning from a company, but just kind of tailoring my career, I wanted to take part in all of the other fun things that Ross has to offer. So if you have any questions about the clubs, I joined the Energy Club, I joined the Strategic Operations Club, I'm a part of the Tauber Institute of Global Operations, as I mentioned, and even just the Maize and Brew Club, the Data Analytics Consulting Club, a lot of really fun things going on here.
That's awesome. And where did you intern this summer?
Yes, so the Tauber Institute for Global Operations sources internships. So I had a little bit of a unique recruiting process, but I did intern at PepsiCo. I was actually on site, one of the very few people who were, and my team helped the Dallas Gatorade plant not only plan their sustainability actions to meet their water use goals by 2025, but also got to implement some projects themselves. So water testing, staying up very late to wait for flavor changeover. So it was a very
Gatorade, the energy drink.
Yes, exactly.
Nice. Wow, that must be interesting.
Definitely.
Love retail. So I have a list of questions from the students, and I will shoot them to you. And feel free to pivot if you think other things might be also helpful. And we'll leave a few minutes at the end for the students online to get a Q&A session. So in your view, what key aspects does Ross look for in a candidate compared to other business schools?
Yeah.
There's a context, so most of the students online today and people who are watching it, they either already got an interview invite with Ross and considering it, or they're applying in round 2.
Perfect. Okay, I appreciate that extra context. Well, congratulations for those who've gotten interviews. Good luck to those submitting. I think one thing that Ross takes really seriously, and it really manifests in our culture, is admissions jokingly said like they have a strong no jerk policy, meaning they don't want mean people around. And I think how that manifests is there's a lot of people around, you're going to be working in groups, and you don't want someone who's just focused on themselves. Someone who's contributing to the bigger picture, not only in the business sense, but here in a community. What it means to be a Ross alumni is someone who gives back, always paying it forward, using business as a tool for good. And so, you can have career aspirations, but if you're trying to meet them at the cost of other people's success, that's not going to be a good fit. And I don't mean that insultingly. There are other business schools whose competitive culture might mesh better, but here at Ross, we're very collaborative. And I think that really sets us apart. So wanting to work with a team, learn from other people, enjoy the diverse backgrounds. I mean, like 97% or something of us, are career switchers. And so being around people who are coming from different backgrounds, going to different, places in the future, what can you do with your intersection time here? They're really looking for folks to make an impact.
That's awesome, Katie. Yeah, I totally agree that Ross's culture is very distinctive. Whereas our interaction with all different business schools, Ross definitely stands out as being the nicest crowd. Totally resonate that. Thank you very much. Second question is, looking back, I'm pretty sure you applied to other business schools, more than one. What was the deciding factor for you to choose Ross over other schools?
Yeah, so I, kind of maybe picking up on my background, the technology, the operations and supply chain, I really wanted to stay in touch with the technical skill set. And I think MBA programs are becoming better and better at that. And so those types of programs are really at the top of my list. Berkeley Haas, MIT Sloan, and Ross were the three schools I ended up applying to. And after visiting on campus, I mean, the Ross people, they're just so engaged. They want to make your time in Ann Arbor the best it can be. They want to answer your questions. They want to refer you to another friend. And I found that really warm feel and just very open and, I think just very diverse. I met people who were doing, who were being teachers and who were being investment bankers and who are now, maybe switching roles in the future. And so I think that really helped me, coming from consulting. After a while, you start to hear the same types of frameworks being used and the same types of personalities. And I was very ready to hear how other people approach problems. And so I got all of those immediately. I know meeting on campus right now isn't possible, given the pandemic, but also just for international students. So I think, having Ross as student ambassadors reaching out, folks who I've interviewed at Ross have said that that's been a really helpful resource. And I think that can help people decide as well.
Yeah, that's great. Ross does have we heard has a reputation in technology preference. So how many of your classmates would you say are coming from an engineering background?
Well, that's a good question. I would definitely look on the website because I know they have this information. I don't even think 20% is an overestimate. I think, both from not only undergraduate education, but professional, sometimes those don't match up either. So between that, I think probably, maybe 10 to 15% isn't a bad guess, but I'm sure it's on the website too.
That's a lot. Thank you. So they ask any red flags that you avoided when you were applying that you also recommend other students to stay away from?
Red flags. I can't think of anything that would be a red flag. I think one thing I really liked about the Ross admission team's philosophy on applications is they aren't looking for red flags. They are looking for reasons to accept you. And so they have a very positive aspect of your application. So for example, some people, they're really nervous about their low GMAT score. Other people, their undergraduate education, or, maybe even there's a job gap of 2 years. And so they're not going to be focusing on those areas of your application. They're looking for ways to admit you. And so, what are your strengths? Let them shine. Be yourself, be authentic, be upfront about your strengths. And then, applications at Ross, like any other schools, will have space for you to explain any gaps. And so if there is a glaring issue, then I think that's easily resolved. And it by no means should feel like a deal breaker to you, because it won't for the Ross admissions committee. I think authenticity is definitely something that people look for, and kind of to the no jerk policy, just really showing that yourself and what you bring to the community and you're ready to share that.
Totally. Thank you for that. I do agree. So we also know Ross has this famous MAP program. Would you mind giving us some information about it for students who are not so familiar with it? And some are asking whether this MAP project experience can be added to the resume.
Yes, absolutely. So MAP stands for Multidisciplinary Action Project. And it actually is the only class that we take during our 4th quarter of our first year. So you are just doing this consulting project full time, and you're not taking any other courses. And you're working with a group of maybe 5 to 7 students. And there are some really cool projects. There's probably some information on the website about the types of things that we've done in the past. And you can work for anyone from the Microsofts, Amazons, Ubers of the world. I saw some interest in big tech in the questions, or Peruvian government, the national parks. A few years ago, we had a United Nations project. My MAP project was actually for impro precision casting. And so I see a lot of folks from China on the phone. So I was supposed to go out to China, but of course that would have been in March, which has not worked out well for either party. And so they were opening a new business unit for their investment casting in Mexico. And so we were just there to get an understanding of how their supply chain might change, where should they be sourcing from, what types of local business practices in Mexico would need to be taken into consideration as they built that out. And so basically it just became a really huge sourcing project. We got to reach out to local suppliers, got to do our interviews in Spanish. We had folks in Turkey and Chicago and California, and we ended up presenting to the CEO. And so, that's a pretty cool, access to have to someone after 7 weeks. And so I will say on the MAP project, yes, absolutely add it to your resume. I would say a lot of folks take it as a second internship, just kind of if they want to, for example, if you are switching from some, industry and you want to go somewhere else, you can kind of use that as a way to build up skills, get used to the industry, work with clients in that space to understand a little bit more. I personally used it as a time to really focus on operations. I knew that I had not worked in that space before. Some people who may have worked at smaller companies before, or maybe in other countries where there's not, as much of a name brand company, they said, I want to work for a really big company with a really big recognized name so that I can kind of get that credibility. And then some people are like, hey, you know what? I'm never going to take a marketing job. I want to do a marketing map. And so any way you want to choose it, you can really use it to enhance your education however you'd like.
Wow, that's amazing. I wanted to try some marketing job when I was at business school. I wish we had that at Arden. So it sounds like MAP has covers a lot of companies that have this special relationship. You mentioned a few. Is it like everybody at Ross can take this MAP project, or is just a selection of a few?
No, it's actually a requirement to graduate. So everyone is taking it, which is really fun. You also get to work with a lot of new people. You're in your sections of 80 people taking courses, and then I was with, a bunch of people I'd never worked with before. So it was great.
That's awesome. So some student ask, you already mentioned a few companies, but besides that, any big tech firms in the Bay Area that Ross has a strong relationship with that people can intern that there?
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely say look at the employment report just to see if the types of companies listed are something that interest you. In normal years, we'll do, when we have our fall break, in October, in the middle of the semester, there are multiple types of treks. And so there's a tech trek that specifically goes to the Bay Area. So the Googles, the Adobes, the LinkedIn's, Microsoft's a little bit up, but, all of those companies, really great relationships, very established programs. And so yes, big tech is definitely what you can do here. The tech club is also probably one of the biggest clubs here. They do weekly education sessions just so, if you get asked in an interview, can you explain the cloud in 3 sentences? And you're not like, and so there's a lot of education, a lot of opportunities, a lot of connections. And then as well as, for tech and any other company, I mean, Ross is the largest alumni, or, University of Michigan is the largest alumni network in the world.
Yeah.
So that's something that honestly, I was told before school and I didn't realize how important it would be. So that's a pretty cool perk to have. And, when you reach out to people who went to University of Michigan, or especially folks who graduated from Ross, they're very, very keen on answering your emails.
Wow, that's another perk. Students pay attention to that. And so, most of the participants today, they're from overseas, and there's some are still in China, mainland, and they're worried about the COVID situation in the US. So with that being said, how is the summer internship return offer going on? Like, do students get fewer return offers because of the COVID, or, do you think it's pretty much the same?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it definitely varies, by industry and by company. There were a lot of, even Oracle, they canceled all of their MBA internships before the summer started. And I don't think, a lot of this is hard to attribute to Ross. So to be quite honest, I'm not sure of the return offer rates. I think that what did change is students' mentalities of, I have this return offer. In a normal year, maybe when they wanted to re-recruit just to see what's out there, they're a lot more likely to take the offer that they have. You know, it's a lot more valuable. And so I know a lot of students are in that situation, but I really can't speak to, you know, how common it was. I think what's actually more common is if you had an internship, you got an offer, and they've really shrunk their full-time recruiting. So a lot of folks, it came down to, did your internship give you an offer? If yes, then you go for it. But still, I mean, there are a lot of, you know, companies like, you know, tech's come up a lot on this call, but I think tech is an industry that's still growing. Whereas, you know, maybe a retail or, you know, hotels, probably not, you know, hiring a lot. So I think change people's strategies, but I don't think that Ross overall is better or worse off than any comparable programs.
How about consulting firms that you saw?
For consulting firms, I think it was a lot of what I mentioned earlier, where they really relied on their intern class to fill up their full-time recruiting. They definitely have been doing offers. I know McKinsey, Bain, BCG, Deloitte have all been doing recruiting here on site. LEK, AMP.
I heard the numbers stay about flat.
So that seems reasonable. I'm not surprised to hear that. So I think consulting in particular is pretty much around the same. I think, you know, firms are thinking through their pipeline, and I know Deloitte in particular, we've had talks actually just yesterday with Dan Helfrich, the consulting CEO, and you know, he and other leaders in the past have kind of emphasized, you know, in 2009 when the financial crisis was really hitting, they shrunk their hiring and then they paid for it for years to come. So I think that, you know, you have to have a long-term view, and even though they might not have a lot of money to spend on new hires, they really see the long-term value, and that's really still working in our favor as MBAs.
I heard the same stories. They're like, we're not making the same mistake this year.
Exactly.
Cool. So talking about consulting, let's switch gear to students who have the engineering background. They're thinking of using MBA as a platform to switch to consulting. So here are some questions around that. They ask, what should I be focusing on in my resume if my career path, my career goal is to switch, you know, from engineering to consulting?
That's a great question. I think it varies by even consulting firm. You know, consulting really is about a person. Like, consulting is really just people and their minds and the value that they bring to clients. And so it's going to be working in teams. It's going to be taking on new problems. It's going to be exhibiting leadership, even if you don't have a formal role. I think those sorts of skills, the more you can talk, you know, about managing stakeholders or managing expectations, managing ambiguity. I think those things, you know, and still, of course, delivering results, you know, quantitatively showing that, I think that will help. Then that, I think, you know, if there's any focus you want to go into, kind of, you know, thinking through how you can show your subject matter expertise if you're focused in a certain type of consulting, because some offices and consulting firms are a little bit more regionally focused or office-based. And so, you know, if there's any particular interest you have, like in healthcare or operations, then, you know, pulling those out where you can will definitely help.
Yeah, makes sense. So one student asked, I'm a candidate with a financial services / trading background, and I would like to switch to consulting after business school. What kind of subsector within consulting suits candidates like me, and what are the perceived strengths and weaknesses, you know, in the eyes of admissions for people with my background?
I will say you're probably not going to want to hear that I don't have an answer to this question, but I also think it's really great that I don't really have an answer to this question. You know, consulting can look like a lot of different things, and I think that business school can be a way for you to build up any strengths that, you know, you're interested in, where you may feel there are gaps. Like for me, I didn't have a business background at all. And I was like, okay, if I want to be anywhere up on the corporate ladder, I need to do that. And so, you know, that's not necessarily something that consulting firms are looking for, but they will be probably concerned if I don't have those skills. And so I think just talking to people about, okay, you know, what were the biggest skills that you used? Trying to make sure that you are prepared to perform in that way, or you know how to get there. And so, I would definitely say financial services background doesn't pigeonhole you into any one way of thinking or doing or serving clients. So I think just see what your personal interests are, what sounds the most interesting, what culture, in working with people you might want to work with. But yeah, I would say it's really self-driven, and to, market yourself in the best way possible, and then let consulting firms say, oh, they'd be really great on this team, or, oh, that really aligns to what we're doing. I think you can drive your own career in that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think for consulting, of course, it varies firm by firm, right? And most of the firms do have the financial services practice or that sector, but it doesn't mean you coming from that background, you will have to, get into that sector. I've seen a lot of folks just switch, sectors. And consulting is really about, like you said, the skills of with dealing with people, dealing with the ambiguous problems. So they ask, what are the courses at Ross that are most helpful or useful for consulting?
Yeah, great question. I think, kind of to the last point, it's, consulting requires, thinking on your feet, managing teams. Maybe it requires a lot of Excel or subject matter knowledge. And so in any of those areas, depending on what you want to get out of business school, you can really choose. So for me, even though I was in consulting before, we didn't use a lot of Excel. And so there's a, 2 spreadsheet classes that I took 2 quarters back to back, and it really just helped me make sure that I know all the basics in Excel. And I used so much Solver over the summer and regression analysis. And so I was so grateful to have had that. And so for me, I knew that was a gap. But maybe there's our MO, which stands for Management Organizations classes. Definitely take a look through that. There's one that I am really interested in taking, and it's called Managing High Performing Teams. So how do you get a bunch of people together and deliver results? I mean, if that's not consulting, I don't know what is. Yeah. And so there's no one flavor of class. I also took a big data and analytics course just to get, SQL, Tableau, Python. Not that I'll be doing that in the day-to-day, but working with people, drawing insights from it, all of those things are necessary. So yeah. I think reflecting on what you want to do and what interests you, definitely there's, both from management organizations to technology operations to accounting to, you can go any which way for what's going to help in consulting.
That's the beauty of business school. Yeah. I also agree. Yeah, there are just so many things that you can do, and just make sure you're focused and pick the things that are, that really interest you. Thank you very much, Katie. So those are the questions that we have gathered so far. How about I open it up to the audience today and see if they have some questions, and if they don't, we can wrap up quickly. I know you must be very busy with school. So any questions from, we have 14 people on the line. It's a really great chance to interact with the current student to see how their life is. You can just unmute yourself and then talk.
Well, while folks are thinking of questions, I think, some aspects of Ross that, aren't necessarily at top of mind for people are, coming to, for international students in particular, coming to a new country that you may or may not have been to before and living in a very small city. I think, Ann Arbor is a very, suburban feeling American town, and it's really fantastic because it's definitely a college town. It's ranked highly on most livable and most spirited and all of those really fun things. And my undergraduate experience really didn't have the sports culture that here does. So I think, going outside on a game day and everyone's wearing maize and blue, and it's just a really fun time. There's also really good restaurants. There's all types of people. I think Ross in particular, there's a lot of families and partners. And so ingraining those in the community, I think is so special. And I actually wanted to go to school in a smaller town because I had folks who went to Columbia in particular who were I have a school in New York and it's so fun, but I don't see my classmates outside of class. Yeah. Everyone has their life and their network, and, there's a trillion things to do in the city, and they don't all live in one place. And so it was very hard to build relationships. And that made me so sad because, the best part of it has been forming deep relationships, walking to class with people, being in the same neighborhood, having dinner. I've dog sat for 3 different people in my section this semester. And, it's just that's a really nice aspect of things. So I always like highlighting it because I think it's an often overlooked, aspect of culture, but it really has manifested in ways that, I found friends that I want to stay in touch with long after school is done, and I'm really grateful for that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. I couldn't agree more, because the MBA classmates are the best part of business school. Cool. So if we don't have any questions from the audience, I'll just ask one last one, which is for those who are applying for round 2 for Ross, any last advice for them? They have a little bit less than 2 months to prepare.
Yeah, I would say that, really just take a lot of time to think about yourself, your values, and this isn't even in a business school context. I would say it was a lot more introspection than I expected, but I was like, here are the core values that are really important to me. How do I convey those in a unique way? Anyone could write, this year has been tough. I have had to be strong. I have had to persevere and have hope. Like literally 7 billion people could say that. What makes your story special? Really make it yourself, make it memorable. And that doesn't mean that it has to be something flashy, but something truly genuine. What stories can you bring up? What hopes have you had since you were a child? I think just making it yours is, your story, and owning it and putting it on paper. And I know there's not a lot of words in an essay to do that, but just thinking through and making, everyone count will be good.
Oh, sorry. One last promise. This is the last one. I just thought about the interview process. So what do you remember from your interview? Is it led by admissions officer, or is it second-year students? Or is it like a purely dialogue, or kind of straight to interview questions, that type of style?
Yeah, absolutely. So my interview, I took part in the on-campus interview day. And so that it does entail a second-year student interviewing you, but a lot of international students, due to, of course, travel, and now especially, will opt in for doing an alumni interview. And so just from an admissions perspective, those are weighed equally. And I'm not sure if they've made for second-year students interviewing everyone now. I actually did interview students as a part of round 1. And so as second-year students, you get to kind of have questions. And honestly, our job is very easy and fun, because by getting an interview, the admissions committee is kind of given a stamp of approval that, hey, this person is a high caliber person who could, perform really well here at Ross. And then they kind of pull in second-year students to say, okay, well, now could you be on a team with them? How would they react to the experiences that you've had, And so we just get to pull out from a culture perspective, if you can contribute to Ross, and Ross can give back to you. And so I think it's just a really fun culture fit. There are behavioral interview questions, but it's definitely not high pressure. It is, it's not like a make or break. You don't have to do anything like that, but it's genuinely getting to, the bottom of your story, what Ross, you're hoping to get out of, and, what you can give back to the community in the meantime.
Wow, just hearing you talking about Ross and the classes, the interview process, made me fall in love with Ross again.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Thank you so much, Katie, for your time and all the genuine advice. So we're just going to wrap up today, and we'll share the recording online with you and with other folks. Thank you so much, and then we will call it a day. And good luck and best of luck with your the rest of your school, and then the students' applications.
Thank you. Good luck, everyone.
Go Blue.